The room falls silent. A single candle flickers against the stone walls of a modest study in Florence, the year 1513. In the soft, restless light sits Niccolò Machiavelli, exiled, defeated, and almost forgotten, hunched over old manuscripts as if they are the last warm thing left in the world. His fingers trace the words of men who conquered empires centuries before his birth. Outside those walls, Florence has moved on without him. Inside, he's doing something far more dangerous than plotting revenge. He is conversing with the dead, and the dead are teaching him a method so powerful it can reshape a human life, a nation, even an age. This isn't just a man reading books. This is transformation. This is a disgraced politician discovering a hidden technique that the greatest minds in history have used to transcend their limitations and touch a kind of immortality. And here is the part that may shake you more than any battle story ever could. You've been misled about how history actually moves. You've been told greatness is mostly luck or timing or the result of invisible social forces that no individual can control. You've been told that heroes are mostly myths constructed by propaganda, inflated by textbooks, or reduced to mere products of their era. But if you study the private habits of the men and women who changed the world, a pattern emerges. A repeatable, almost uncomfortable pattern. The greatest figures didn't simply appear out of nowhere. They built themselves using a deliberate practice, one that most people never learn, because once you understand it, you stop seeing greatness as mysterious. You start seeing it as engineered. Napoleon Bonaparte didn't wake up one day and randomly decide to conquer Europe. In the evenings, in the quiet of his military tent, surrounded by maps and candlelight, he read the campaigns of Julius Caesar. He studied not only victories, but the mistakes, every strategic decision, every moment of genius, and every catastrophic failure. Napoleon wasn't reading history the way students do, to memorize dates and names. He was reading history like a man trying to become a weapon. He wasn't trying to learn about Caesar. He was trying to become Caesar reborn. And in many ways, he succeeded. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Caesar himself had done the same thing. The great Roman general was obsessed with Alexander the Great. According to tradition, Caesar wept when he saw a statue of Alexander, realizing that by the same age Alexander had conquered the known world while Caesar had accomplished comparatively little. That moment of comparison, almost painful admiration, ignited a fire that would consume the Roman Republic and birth an empire. And Alexander, in turn, slept with a copy of Homer's Iliad under his pillow. He didn't just admire Achilles, he believed he was Achilles in spirit, if not in blood. He modeled his life, his tactics, even his sense of destiny around the legendary warrior. This is the chain of greatness, stretching back through time like a golden thread, connecting titan to titan across centuries. In the 19th century, the Scottish philosopher Thomas Carlyle gave a name to this phenomenon. He called it the great man theory of history. Today it's controversial, often dismissed, sometimes treated as intellectually impolite. In modern education, it's frequently softened, reframed, or avoided entirely. And yet Carlyle argued something that, once you see it, becomes difficult to unsee. That the history of the world is not primarily shaped by masses of ordinary people, or by economic forces alone, or by faceless social movements drifting like weather across centuries. No. The history of the world, Carlyle claimed, is the biography of great men, of rare individuals whose vision and will shape reality around them. Think about the world you live in right now. Every institution, every technology, every political structure, every cultural idea you interact with daily can be traced back to decisions made by specific individuals. Not perfect individuals, not saints, but individuals with unusual intensity, people who had the capacity to imprint themselves onto the world. They weren't simply products of their time, they were creators of their time. Carlyle wrote with a force that still burns. Universal history, the history of what man has accomplished in this world, is at bottom the history of the great men who have worked here. They were the leaders of men, the modelers, patterns, and in a wide sense, creators of whatsoever the general mass of men contrive to do or to attain. And now the question that should haunt you: where do these great people come from? Are they born from divine lightning strikes? Do they emerge randomly from some cosmic lottery? Or is there something more practical, something more accessible that explains the rise of greatness? The answer is both beautiful and unsettling. Carlyle believed greatness is partly innate, yes. Some people possess unusual qualities, an instinct for leadership, a hunger for mastery, an inner compass that points forward when others feel lost. But he also understood something crucial. Great individuals do not emerge in a vacuum. They appear when history cries out for them, when society faces problems that ordinary approaches cannot solve. In those moments, the great person becomes the decisive factor that transforms possibility into reality. How many Roman legions equal one Julius Caesar? How many competent poets can produce one Shakespeare? The great person is not easily replaceable. This is why the classroom insistence that someone else would have done it anyway often feels reassuring but rings false. It's not just an academic disagreement, it's a denial of human excellence itself. Because if greatness is interchangeable, then excellence is pointless. If anyone could do it, then no one truly did it. But here's the nuance that makes this idea useful rather than naive. Great men are not perfect. Carlyle knew that heroes are flawed, contradictory, sometimes troubled. Alexander drank and raged. Caesar's ambition devoured the republic he claimed to serve. Napoleon's ego marched millions into suffering. Their flaws do not erase their greatness. They make it more instructive. They prove something important. You don't need to be perfect to change the world. You need certain qualities in such abundance: clarity, courage, discipline, strategic intelligence, that reality bends around your decisions. And this is where the story stops being about history and becomes about you. Because the Romans understood something we have largely forgotten. Studying great people doesn't merely teach you facts, it transforms your character. That is the entire point. In the 2nd century, the Greek historian Plutarch wrote parallel lives, examining the lives of titans like Alexander and Caesar, Pericles and Cicero, but Plutarch wasn't writing for scholars in ivory towers, he was writing a manual for self-transformation. By studying the virtues and vices of the great, a reader could copy what works and avoid what fails. He was offering a roadmap to excellence. Around the same time, Suetonius wrote The 12 Caesars, dissecting the emperors of Rome with surgical precision. These weren't just biographies. They were case studies in power, leadership, temptation, ego, and the terrible responsibility of shaping civilization. The ancient world treated biography like a mirror. They believed if you stared long enough into the lives of the great, you could adjust your own life in response. Now fast forward back to Renaissance Florence. Machiavelli, stripped of everything he valued, power, position, respect, finds himself in exile. Yet in that dark study, surrounded by crumbling manuscripts, he makes a discovery that echoes across 5 centuries. He writes something that should be carved into the mind of anyone seeking greatness. There is nothing more precious to me than the knowledge of the great men I have gained by studying history. For him, this wasn't academic curiosity, it was survival, it was resurrection. He understood that if you want to rule, you must study rulers. If you want to lead, you must study leaders. If you want to create, you must study creators. Machiavelli wrote explicitly that anyone seeking power must read history, especially the accounts of great leaders and their achievements. Study their wartime strategies, study the reasons for victories and defeats so you can avoid their failures and imitate their successes. But he adds something that separates people who admire greatness from people who achieve it. He says that above all, you must do what some great men have done in the past. Choose a leader who has been much praised and admired, and keep his example and achievements in mind at all times. This is the secret mechanism. Choose your hero with the same care you choose your destiny, because in a deep sense, they become the same choice. Your hero becomes your template, your standard, your measuring stick. It shapes what you consider possible. It shapes what you are willing to sacrifice. It shapes what you think excellent looks like. Machiavelli understood something painful. Most people operate through imitation. We are social creatures. We mirror what we see. We absorb behaviors, ambitions, fears, and standards from our environment. And here is the tragedy. Most people imitate mediocrity because that's all they're surrounded by. They model themselves on whoever is nearby, whoever is popular, whoever is convenient, people who may have no extraordinary qualities at all. That's why most lives remain small, confined, and forgettable. But if you consciously choose to imitate someone truly great, someone who achieved extraordinary things, then even if you fall short of their heights, you will rise far above where you would have been. You will be aiming for the stars, and even landing on the moon is infinitely better than staying in the dirt. This is why your choice of heroes is one of the most important decisions you will ever make. It sets the ceiling of your potential. It determines which qualities you'll develop, which skills you'll pursue, which version of yourself you'll become. Somewhere along the way, we stopped teaching this. You probably weren't taught the great man theory as a living practice. Instead, you were likely fed a competing narrative. History from below, social history, the idea that exceptional individuals don't really matter, that they are just products of their environment, lucky beneficiaries of forces beyond their control. Herbert Spencer attacked Carlyle, arguing that before the great man can remake society, society must make him. That view evolved into modern frameworks that emphasize structures over individuals, movements, demographics, economics, systems. And to be clear, those frameworks contain truth. Societies create conditions. Context matters, timing matters. No one rises in a vacuum. But here's the problem when you push that narrative too far. It removes the human model. It leaves you with no one to become. It turns excellence into either illusion or oppression. Leaders become interchangeable figureheads. Greatness becomes either propaganda or crime. And when you teach generations that greatness is not real, you also teach them not to attempt it. The great man theory, at its best, doesn't demand worship. It demands attention. It says greatness is real, that human capability has extremes, and that those extremes can be studied. But we need nuance. Carlyle sometimes wrote about heroes in almost religious terms, as if they were light descending into darkness. We don't have to go that far. We should study great people, not because they were morally perfect, but because they possessed qualities that made them effective. Clarity of purpose, strategic intelligence, discipline, courage under pressure, the ability to persuade, the ability to organize, the ability to endure. A person can be a brilliant orator and use that skill for evil. That doesn't mean oratory is evil. It means skill is powerful, and power demands responsibility. Many political and military geniuses had questionable motives, but you can still learn from their tactics and apply those lessons to noble ends. This is what great figures should be for us. Teachers of something deep about human nature, mastery, and the heights of human capability. Not saints, not idols, teachers. Now, if you want to apply this ancient method in your own life, it must become practical. It cannot remain motivational poetry. The method has 3 parts, and this is where most people fail. First, you choose your hero deliberately. Not a celebrity you like, not someone who is merely popular, but someone whose achievements reflect qualities you truly want. Discipline, courage, creative power, strategic thinking, leadership, moral strength, intellectual mastery, whatever matters most to the life you want to build. Second, you study them correctly. Not for entertainment, not for trivia. You study them like an apprentice studies a master. Decisions, habits, standards, trade-offs, blind spots, failures, and how they responded. Third, you imitate with intent. You translate the principles into your own context. You don't copy their clothes or their era, you copy their process. This is exactly what Napoleon was doing with Caesar. He wasn't copying the Roman toga. He was copying the strategic mind. He was internalizing decision-making under pressure. He was learning how a great commander thinks when lives and outcomes are on the line. Caesar did the same with Alexander. Alexander did the same with Achilles, even though Achilles may have been more myth than man. The pattern remains. Greatness studies greatness, not because it is worshipful, but because it is efficient. It compresses time. It gives you 1,000 lifetimes of experience without requiring you to live them. And this is what Machiavelli meant when he described conversing with the dead. He wasn't being poetic to sound intelligent. He meant it literally. When you study a great person deeply, when you read their words, their letters, their decisions, their recorded thoughts, you begin to anticipate how they would respond to a problem. You begin to hear their standards in your head. You begin to measure yourself against something higher than the average crowd around you. That changes you, and it changes you in a specific way. It makes you intolerant of your own mediocrity, not in a self-hating way, but in a clarifying way. You start noticing the moments where you choose comfort over discipline, distraction over focus, applause over mastery. You begin to see the hidden cost of small choices. Greatness is not one grand decision. It is thousands of decisions made under a standard that most people never adopt. This is why your hero becomes your measuring stick. Every time you face a hard choice, you silently ask, what would my model do here? Not because you want to become a clone, but because you want to borrow a higher level of judgment. And slowly, through repetition, that borrowed judgment becomes your own. Now let's make this even more real. Most people are already imitating someone. They're imitating the loudest voice in their environment. They're imitating friends, family, co-workers, internet personalities, trends. They think they are choosing freely, but they are being shaped unconsciously. That's the danger. You become a reflection of your surroundings without realizing it. The ancient method simply takes imitation, which is already happening, and turns it into a conscious tool. So here's your challenge, and it's not a cute question. It's a life-defining one. Who is your hero? Who have you chosen as your model? Have you consciously selected someone who embodies qualities you want to develop, or are you passively absorbing whoever society puts in front of you? Make no mistake, you are imitating someone. The only question is whether you are doing it intentionally or accidentally. Napoleon studied Caesar. Caesar studied Alexander. Alexander studied Achilles. Each stood on the shoulders of giants and became a giant himself. That chain is not dead. It continues today, and it's waiting for you to grab hold of it. The great men and women of history are calling across centuries, not asking for worship, but offering wisdom, methods, and hard-won lessons. Will you answer? If you want to begin right now, here is a simple practice that transforms the method from inspiration into action. Choose one model for one season of your life, 90 days, 6 months, a year. Read their biography, but don't stop there. Read their letters, speeches, diaries, strategy, habits. Write down recurring patterns, how they handled pressure, how they disciplined themselves, how they learned, how they dealt with failure. Then take one principle and apply it immediately. If your hero wrote daily, you write daily. If your hero trained relentlessly, you adopt a training ritual. If your hero planned strategically, you build a weekly planning system. The goal is not to admire, the goal is to become. And be honest about something else. Most people avoid this method because it's demanding. Once you choose a great model, you can no longer pretend your life is limited only by circumstances. You begin to see how much depends on standards, focus, and sacrifice. You begin to feel the tension between who you are and who you could become. That tension is uncomfortable, but it is also the birthplace of transformation, because this is the real secret behind the chain of greatness. Greatness is not inherited like a family heirloom. It is learned through proximity. Proximity not in space, but in mind. When you place your mind near great minds consistently, your mind stretches, your standards rise, your identity changes. That is what Machiavelli found in exile. That is what Caesar found in Alexander. That is what Napoleon found in Caesar. It's not magic, it's method. So choose wisely, choose greatly. Your future self is watching, and whether you like it or not, the world you'll inhabit 10 years from now is being built by what you imitate today. If you want an extraordinary life, you need an extraordinary model. If you want to rise above average, you need to stop measuring yourself by average people. The dead are waiting, their lessons are intact, their victories and failures are preserved. All that remains is your decision to sit down, open the book, and begin the conversation. Drop a comment and tell me who your hero is and why. Not because it helps an algorithm, but because speaking the choice out loud makes it real. It's a declaration of your standard. And once you declare a standard, you either rise to meet it, or you quietly admit you never truly wanted greatness in the first place. Choose wisely, choose greatly. Your future is listening.